22 years ago, in April of 1999, Nas would release his third studio album, I Am, and peak at #1 on the Billboard 200 chart, selling over 470,000 copies in his first week of sale. At this point in Nas's career, he was riding off of the success of his debut album, Illmatic, which is widely considered to be one of, if not the best rap albums of all time, and a really great sophomore effort with It Was Written, which people consider to be a classic too. By the way, comment down below and list how many classic solo albums you think Nas has. I was searching on Reddit pages and other places, and it looks like the general consensus is between 2 to 4. I personally think Nas has 3 undeniable classics from the ones I've listened to. I still need to listen to Street's Disciple and Godson, but my 3 undeniable ones are Illmatic, Stillmatic, and It Was Written. I'll let y'all fight over if Lost Tapes will be added as 4 because it's a compilation album, but I did a poll on my page, and at the time of recording this, it's been out for a couple hours and the race is tight. As you can see, 5+ albums is winning barely, and 3 or 4 are not that far from behind. This is a very mixed poll if you ask me, but I'm sticking with my 3 bona fide classics, and whatever you want to add after those 3 albums to me are bonuses. If you want to add I Am, Godson, etc., that's up to whoever, but back to the story though. Illmatic was the introduction of Nas album-wise to hip-hop listeners, but It Was Written was the real breakthrough for Nas because it was Nas's first album to go #1 on the Billboard 200, and it remained #1 for 4 straight weeks. Nas proved that there would be no sophomore slump. Illmatic would peak out at #12 on the Billboard 200. Illmatic was released in April of 1994, and It Was Written released in July of 1996. As I said in my DMX video, that back in the day, rappers dropped an album once a year or once every 2 years, sometimes maybe even 3. Obviously, most of the times, there were mixtapes sprinkled in there, but after It Was Written was released, people began to anticipate where would Nas go with his third album. Was he going to go more of the commercial route, keep it street, or try to do both? Little did they know, or Nas know, that his third album would be impacted by multiple different things. Such things as, according to famed photographer Danny Hastings, Nas nearly lost his life during the photo shoot for the album I Am's cover art. To create the mask, Hastings and his team needed to make a mold of Nas's face by covering it in a clay-like substance while poking holes in his nostrils to breathe. Unfortunately, the clay got caught in Nas's nose and he nearly suffocated. Nas would get asphyxiated and the clay started going in his nose and his mouth was closed, so he couldn't breathe for about a minute or 2. Thankfully, Hastings and his team were able to save Nas just in time. They thought Nas was going to walk out on them, but to their surprise, Nas said he wanted to do it again. This is something I didn't know prior to doing this research for this video, and that's actually really interesting. An additional fact is that that same photographer would elaborate how the I Am album art was intended to build on the theme from the covers of Nas's previous efforts, Illmatic and It Was Written. The first one, you have Nas pictured to be a little boy. The second was Nas to be older. And the third, he was a king. He was on top of the world. Some of the other crazy things that happened because of this album was the infamous Diddy and Steve Stout incident due to the scene of a depiction of Nas and Puffy being crucified not being removed in the final version from the Hate Me Now video, which premiered on TRL less than 2 weeks after the album's release. That story deserves to be saved for a whole video in the future because, man, that's just a messy story. But the other big thing, which is the reason why y'all are probably here, is because the original version of I Am was leaked, which led to its delay in the restructuring of the track list. Before I get more into the video, I would first like to thank you guys for coming to see this, because you guys could be doing a million other things right now, but instead you're here with me and I appreciate that. If you guys like the content, you guys should like, comment, and subscribe to help the channel grow. I will reply to all the comments and I love going through them and seeing what you guys think. Also, follow my Instagram too, that would be greatly appreciated. You guys can DM me some video ideas or just show me some love. Comment down below your favorite track from the leaked version of I Am or the official version that we have today. Also, let me know where you're tuning in from. Represent where you're from. This is actually a fan requested video, so shout out to my man GrizzDog Records on Instagram for the idea and sending me an article about this topic, which I'll put in the description. Without further ado, I give you What If Nas's I Am Was Never Bootlegged. In February of 1999, almost 2 full months ahead of the album's original March 30th release date, 13 unreleased tracks from Nas's forthcoming release were leaked online, which prompted him to push the album back and reconfigure the track listing. I Am became one of the first major label releases to be widely leaked using MP3 technology. The tracks were Fetus, Small World, Money Is My B, Project Windows, Papa Was a Player, Dr. Knockboot, Daydreamin', Stay Schemin', Sometimes I Wonder, Hardest Thing to Do Is Stay Alive, Drunk by Myself, Wanna Play, Blazer 50, and We Will Survive. I Am was originally going to be a double disc album entitled I Am the Autobiography, with the first disc following Nas's journey from birth to death by suicide, and the second disc chronicling his afterlife, but unfortunately, Nas and Columbia, who was his record label at the time, opted to scrap the double disc release and the overall concept. That is a true shame, because that would have been a dope concept for an album, especially with someone of Nas's caliber of rhyme and storytelling. Out of those 13 tracks I just named, I think almost all of them got repurposed. All the songs that ended up on the official version of I Am were Small World, Money Is My B, Dr. Knockboot, and We Will Survive. Fetus, Papa Was a Player, Drunk by Myself, and Blazer 50 ended up on the Lost Tapes. Project Windows would end up being on Nostradamus, which we'll talk about a little later. Daydreamin' and Stay Schemin' has never saw an official release on a project, but what's interesting and kind of a fun fact about this track is that it samples and is inspired by the Kurtis Blow song Daydreamin' off of his album Tough, which released in 1982. The beat is practically the same in Nas's version, and the hook is inspired by the original song. Kurtis says in his version, "Daydreamin' takes me to where I wanna be. Daydreamin' lets me have you here with me." And in Nas's version, he says, "Stay scheming, niggas wanna kidnap me." Now, upon listening to that, I didn't think much of it until I realized that French Montana used that in Rick Ross's song Stay Schemin', and y'all can say what y'all want about French Montana, but I really like his version along with the others. But back to the unreleased tracks. Sometimes I Wonder and The Hardest Thing to Do Is Stay Alive ended up being on the In My Ghetto EP, with The Hardest Thing to Do Is Stay Alive now being named Body in a Bag. Finally, we get to Wanna Play, which ended up being on the Queensbridge to Compton project, and the song is now called Wanna Play Rough. Only 4 songs from the leaked version of the album made it to the official version of the album, as said a little earlier. The I Am we got featured some of Nas's best and worst songs at this point in his career. Obviously, with the highlights being songs like Nas's Like, Hate Me Now, New York State of Mind Part 2, and lowlights being songs like Dr. Knockboot. Nas himself even said he regretted doing that song and letting people talk him into putting that song on the album. He thinks the title itself is corny. This is what the man said. So I'm sorry if that's your jam. Like, this is what the man said. But an official version of the intended double album has never leaked, and it does remain unclear whether or not it was ever completed. Now we'll get into the alternate history of what if Nas's I Am was never bootlegged. Imagine Nas releasing I Am in March of 1999 and it becomes a classic double disc album alongside the likes of Biggie's Life After Death, Tupac's All Eyes on Me, the Outkast Speakerboxx Love Below, etc. Pretty much all double disc albums get critiqued for their length and filler, but imagine if Nas dropped this album with a storyline and a cohesive sound to it. You also have to think that Nas in this alternate timeline probably wouldn't have released Hate Me Now, which would have prevented all of the issues with the video itself and the Diddy Steve style situation. In this alternate timeline, Nas also doesn't put out Nostradamus, which in real life released 7 months after I Am. Nostradamus is widely considered to be one of, if not the worst efforts in Nas's discography. So if I Am never leaked, he could have avoided that, and who knows, that could have affected a lot of things, because that could have affected Illmatic too, because that was in a way like Nas's comeback album after Nostradamus, if you want to look at it like that. Also, I forgot to mention that in this alternate timeline, the lost tapes wouldn't exist, so keep that in mind. Now in the article, it says some wild stuff happens in this alternate timeline, which y'all can read it and see what it says, because some stuff is really wild, like DMX turned into a full-time actor. Like that was just wild. But yeah, that alone should have you go read the full article to see what they said. In this article, it also brings up the possibility that if Nas releases the original version of I Am, it would have then led to a cultural shift in mainstream hip-hop. Many artists would soon try to duplicate the double disc album idea, but then it would lead to many poor quality albums in the process. As far as solo rapper double disc albums go, we know Life After Death was released after Biggie died, and All Eyes on Me released 7 months before Tupac died, for some examples. Both albums sold very well first week and went on to sell well after their deaths, with both of them going diamond, which means they sold over 10 million copies. Imagine if Nas released a classic double disc album as a solo artist in 1999, that would have been wild. Like I said, Tupac was alive for a minute after All Eyes on Me, but y'all know what went on to happen to him. RP Tupac, RP Biggie. Then the last thing that would have changed in this alternate timeline is that Nas would have been the undisputed king of New York, at least living king, that is. By textbook definition, undisputed means not disputed or called into question. Nas would have had an incredible 3-album run with Illmatic. It was written in this version of I Am. And as we know, Nostradamus probably wouldn't exist in this timeline. Some people may think despite this, Nas still reigns supreme, but Jay-Z went on to have a mean streak at the top of his time, and DMX for a time was doing his thing. 50 Cent came later, but peak 50 was just very wild too. If I missed someone, place a comment down below. Once again, I want to let y'all duke that out in the comments with however you want to do it, because I feel like it's not my place to place whoever the true king was of New York, because that's not my era at all. I was born a few years later after 1999. Now, I say all this to say, we will never know what would have actually happened if Nas came with the double disc album. The main reason is because he would end up never finishing the concept of the album, which leads to us not hearing or knowing what all the songs were. There's still a chance that Nas could have fumbled the album without the leak by adding more radio-friendly songs and all that other stuff. It's nearly impossible to predict this alternate version of I Am and how it would have or wouldn't have not lived up to the hype in this alternate reality. Who knows, maybe Nas would make a Nostradamus type album in the alternate timeline, and or a Illmatic type of album in this alternate timeline. We will never know. All in all, this pretty much wraps up the video. Make sure to check out the link in the description, and make sure to tell me what you guys think, what would have happened if the original version of I Am came out. Also, if there are any more big rap leaks like this that you want me to talk about, put it in the comment section below. We're really grinding out here this summer, so make sure y'all stay tuned, because we're going stupid this summer. This next week, the lineup is looking crazy. Max B documentary coming soon, and I have a surprise video on top of that dropping, so watch out. Peace.